Call this meeting to order of our council work session on February 5th, 2019. The record shall reflect that all members are present. There is a quorum, and we'll move directly to Mr. Probst for the city administrator update.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We've been obviously going through the sidewalk process for now, so I won't bore you with that, but we are making pretty good progress, especially on the north end now. That's moving along. The big thing that I want to update you on is staff has been working very hard on those R1A zoning edits that we discussed at our planning retreat. And just to give you a timeline on where we're at with that, we'd like to probably call for a special planning and code committee meeting, maybe around February 20th, 21st, somewhere in that range. I'll get with you all on that committee later about setting that exact date and time so that we can go ahead and get your input nailed down on that after we finish our edits. And then before it reaches planning and zoning in March. And then by April, we'll have it ready to come back before you here in council. So that's the big thing that we're working on here now. That's all I have, Mayor.
Any questions? Mr. Bailey, Central Services, please.
Thank you, sir. Everything numbers-wise stayed pretty much standard for January compared to last year, and then kind of tracking through the end of this past year. Couple of highlights that I wanted to hit. One of our CIP projects for 2019 was a GIS system throughout the city that I had discussed back during budget and planning. We have started that process with Carter and Sloop after going through bids and evaluations, then having prices and whatnot. We had budgeted $250,000, which matched what they had submitted prior that we asked for approval that was just under that. We've had 2 meetings with them, and they're working right now through our systems and a needs assessment to start building that program, to which point we should have everything by maybe mid-year, and I may have to come back to council for approval of hardware if we decide to host that locally or if we decide to put it in the cloud. Just kind of depends on what Esri comes out with. My grounds crew, I've kind of spoken highly of them over the last couple of months. They almost hit 3,000 pounds of trash picked up in January. So they've stayed rather busy. Jumping over to facilities, the Onstage Playhouse building, we're actually working with a company that has come to us wishing to donate a new roof. So that is a kind of a big win for the city. Right now they're pricing out different things. We're working on some warranty issues, how we take care of that down the road and who's responsible, and then some other repairs to the exterior as we also do the roof. And then the last thing that's program that Logan and I have worked on is an internship program through the University of Georgia. It's the School of Public and International Affairs. They have an emerging leaders internship program to where they essentially, you work through an interview process for your needs internally. And they provide you with students that are looking for local municipal governments to work with. So over the course of the end of this week, first of this coming week, we actually have interviews with 3 individuals from the school and the undergraduate program currently. So we should have somebody on board by maybe the end of next week, I would say, that'll start working with us 20 hours a week. And hopefully I can introduce them at the next council meeting. And it's a good program that we can get a lot out of. We're hoping that we can partner with them and maybe gain 2 undergrads potentially during this, what would be a spring semester, into the summer, and then eventually bring on some graduate level students that could do some higher level type stuff within the city, some policy studies, some different things of that nature. So just a good program that I'm happy to be part of and kind of work with them. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for Chris? Thank you for all your work, quick and painless. Moving to committee reports, finance, Mr. Adcock.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Thompson will give us a finance report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. Y'all have the December financial status report in front of you. I will say that these are not the final numbers for December because of year-end entries and audit entries and accruals that we are working on. So the final numbers to you, hopefully in the next month or so, but these are the preliminary December 2018 numbers. I do anticipate a few budget amendments to bring before you next month, and we'll get those together and bring those to you to be approved. I do want to point out that our property tax collections, thus far for 2018, property taxes are at 98%, which is very impressive. And our staff has been working very diligently over the last 2 weeks on utility billing training on the new system, that we hope to have that implemented soon rather than later. And our external auditors, Malden and Jenkins, will be here on site for the next 2 weeks doing their field work for our external audit. If you have any questions about the report or anything in the finance department, I'll be glad to answer those questions.
Anyone have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Beth. The next item on the agenda is a renewal of the health and ancillary insurance.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We met back at the budget meeting and we talked about some of the changes that we were proposing to make to the health plan. And tonight, we're going to show you the renewal as it stands based on those changes that we're proposing for the plan this year. We're having a good year from a claims perspective. Matt Bidwell has joined us tonight. He's going to go through those numbers in just a few minutes. But I think we had targeted about $1.8 million. It looks like we'll probably come in at about $1.6 million on the total plan for this year. This year, we have an initiative. We're going to change the calendar so that the health plan starts on January 1 in 2020. So what you're going to hear tonight is a proposal and the renewal for a 9-month period from April until the end of December. Some other highlights that we're looking at again for the health plan is we are looking at a third day for the clinic. We find the utilization is extremely high. People like the clinic. And what we're finding is that's helping us maintain those costs or contain those costs and keep them down a little bit. Also really going to hit promotion of Teladoc. We've got that as a free service in our health plan right now. And unfortunately, I don't think it's been advertised well enough, and it's certainly underutilized. It's another way for people to avoid going to the health, to the doctor and spending those dollars. So again, we'll really hit Teladoc. I think that can help us continue to drive down these costs on the health plan. Where we're trying to work with our local fitness companies to create that healthy wellness attitude and see if we can't get some discounts working through those as well. Elective benefits will not change. We're going to, have our partners like Allstate and Aflac come in and continue to work with our associates on those. The biggest initiative that we had, though, was to look at how do we make the wellness plan a little bit easier for people to understand. So we've gone to the 4 different metrics that we're going to be measuring. And those are the cholesterol ratio, the blood pressure, the BMI, and whether or not you use tobacco. You're going to get hit hard, again, still in the plan if you're a tobacco user or nicotine. And we were doing this again for another reason too, and that was to reduce from 28 deduction codes down to 4. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Bidwell from MSI, who is our broker on the health benefit plan.
Thank you, Les, and good evening, everybody. I'm going to try to use this. I hope it works. There we go. I'd like to start off, and I can't remember from one day to another what happened, and now you want me to remember what we did last year. I always like to start off with what happened last year. Last year, the city changed to Meritain as their claims administrator, and we changed our network provider to Aetna. That was a fairly significant change for us. The employee deductions last year, when we started working with you guys, I think there was well over 40 or 50 different deductions, and we narrowed those down to where it was maybe just a couple of dozen. And so we were trying to move to try to simplify the payroll area. All the enrollment in elections prior to last year, when an employee made an election, it was on pen and paper. And so that's all been now transferred into an electronic format. So when an employee goes in and they change their address, they actually change it with every insurance company one time. And so it's a much more efficient process. It also makes it a lot easier on the back end for the staff here in terms of tracking changes. The dental insurance last year was changed to Delta, and that was specifically changed to Delta to give the employees here more access to local dentists that were actually in that network. And that was seen very positive by everybody. The vision coverage was changed to Aetna. This is a voluntary plan. The city doesn't participate, but the rates actually reduced about 40%. And we, both on the Delta Dental and on the Aetna, those rates are guaranteed for another year, so they're not up for review right now. And then the basic life is with Standard Life. It renewed last year with no change. And again, we had a 2-year rate guarantee. So this is what we were looking at a year ago. And so I'd like to now move into the upcoming year. And Les had touched upon this, but there's several proposed changes we'd like to put before council. Currently, what we have is we have several different dozen deductions an employee can have. We have the base deductions, which you see we labeled them as current, but those deductions can change based upon whether the employee is wellness or non-wellness, and if they are tobacco or non-tobacco. And we currently have 45 employees who have a tobacco surcharge, and we have 9 employees who have a non-wellness surcharge. And so what we're asking, putting forth in front of council is we'd like to get rid of the surcharges, and we'd like to have just one cost. If I take single coverage, I'm going to pay $14.06. If I'm covering my family, I'm going to pay $180.70. Those surcharges that were being collected by the city totaled just over $22,594. So by making these slight adjustments on the cost, we're able to recoup that $22,594 so that we can keep this a cost-neutral change in terms of a budgetary item for the city. We went through this change and we allowed we used a generally accepted accounting process that we use in terms of trying to distribute how we should make the change. And just to simplify it, each employee is going to pay approximately $2.50 more. If you're covering 2 adults, an employee and spouse, you're paying a little bit over $5 more. If you're covering your children, you're paying just a little bit under $5 because the claims on an employee who has kids, they actuarially come in slightly less than an employee who's actually covering one adult dependent. And then the family cost is going up a little bit over $7.50. So we tried to equally distribute that in a way that wasn't going to currently disrupt the amount that is being paid by the city for each level. The other proposed change, since we are no longer going to have multiple different costs for employees to pay, we're going to move more toward a benefit change. And so the first part of that is we're proposing that the city change both their deductible and their maximum out of pocket that an employee pays. Now, I want to point out here real quickly that if you have to pay a copay to see your doctor, or if you have to pay a copay to get your prescription drug, your deductible does not come into play. For probably 70% of our employees, they never have to pay their deductible during the year. Your deductible comes into play if you have surgery, you have advanced imaging scan, you have to be inpatient hospitalized, outpatient surgery. That's when the deductible comes into play. So again, it's not that everybody's going to be affected by this, but the 30% of our employees who do have to meet the deductible during the year, we're asking to take that standard deductible from $500 up to $1,750. And we're asking you to take the maximum out of pocket. And the maximum out of pocket is what it means exactly what it says. It is a total combination of what I pay in co-pays, what I pay in deductible, and what I pay in my co-insurance, which is the 20% you have to pay after your deductible's met. Currently, when those items all total up, and this is prescription drugs and medical co-pays, when those total to $2,000, the employee has no more liability for the rest of the year. The plan pays 100%. So we're asking to also take that limit and move it to $3,000. So it's going up, so is the deductible. If this change goes forth, then this would actually impact your claims by 6%. And what I mean by the impact is if by making this change, your claims that are being projected out today, right now, they're actually going to be about 6% less. So this has a positive impact in terms of the actual claims being paid. Now, to go along with this, so I'm going to move to page 5, is that we're going to give the employee the opportunity to earn back that deductible. So I guess I like to look at it this way. If I'm not going to eat right, if I'm not going to take care of myself, if I'm going to ignore the coaches, then when I get sick, I'm going to have to pay more. And I like to take this along the same analogy. If I drive fast and I get caught and I run stop signs and I drink and drive, I pay more for my car insurance. And conversely, we want to encourage people to take care of themselves. And we want to encourage them to work within the program. And if they do, when they get sick and they have that, they're one of the 30% who have to meet that deductible, well, they can actually earn that deductible back. So if I have a body mass that's within line, and for the purpose of this, we're looking at a BMI less than 30, then you get your deductibles lowered from $1,750 down to $1,500. If I have a good cholesterol ratio, I'm watching my cholesterol, then I get another $250 of my deductible back. If my blood pressure is controlled, I'm going to get the other $250 back. And then finally, if I'm non-tobacco, I'm getting $500 back. And I know that from the last slide, we have 45 people here who are tobacco users. That means I've got about another 150 people right out the gate that deductible is already $500, going to be $500 lower for them. So by participating in this fully and getting all the credits, an employee can actually get their deductible back to $500. And what we've done is we've simplified it, and we think we've properly incentivized it to get the employee to participate in the program. We know that there's going to be some employees who won't participate. We know there's going to be some who are going to take full advantage of the program. And if we end up with the average deductible on all the employees at $1,000, then the actual claims that we're seeing being paid by the city are going to reduce by about 4%. So it actually has a net positive effect on the back end too. I like to point out where we were a year ago. This is our year-ending report. We do these reports in February. You never get to see what happened last year. And the very far bottom corner of that slide, you'll see that the total claims paid last year was $1,527,391. So those were the claims paid underneath the aggregate. We actually had several laser claims that had a maximum liability of $375 that aren't included in that total. But you can see that under the aggregate report, we actually were right at just about 1.5 million plus. Excuse me, I'll go back. If you look at the claims through December on this report, we were just at, my eyeballs are trying real hard, just at 1.2 million is what we were paid through December. And on the current plan year, through December, we're running just under $1 million on this actual ag report. So we're actually running a little bit ahead of where we were last year. We still think that we're going to finish up somewhere just under 1.6 million for the year. The estimated for the year was about 1.8, so we're still running well. When we left the prior plan and we moved over to Meritain, there were claims that were still out there from, they happened prior to April 1, but they got paid after April 1. And those are claims that we call run-out claims. And so to be 100% accurate on this report, there's about $85,000 worth of claims that don't show anywhere. And so if I were to tack them on there, our total through December would really be just a little bit over $1,050,000, and that's compared to $1.2 million from the previous same time frame a year ago. And then this is a slide I actually debated taking off because it's got too many numbers on it. The last slide is really the slide that's going to, I think, give you a good financial. But I wanted to break down the numbers so you can see where everything's coming from. Your top three charges are the actual charges that we're paying Meritain. We're not paying a PPO access fee because that's actually included with the admin charges above. Our fee is actually included in the administrative cost, and that our fee is located there on the about the fourth, fifth line from the top. You can see here underneath that our specific insurance cost. What specific insurance is that on every individual within the city's insurance plan, there's a $60,000 deductible for claims. So anything above that $60,000 is actually paid by the reinsurers. And our cost for it currently was at $123.39. We've got a couple things in the hopper that are coming up next year where the reinsurer is upping that significantly, about a 75% increase to $214. And as what usually happens in cases like this, we're buying a deductible from a reinsurer of $60,000. And insurance companies like to insure risk. And if they see something that they think is going to be a $100,000 claim, they don't call that insurance. They call that, well, we're going to pay a $40,000 claim. So they take that $40,000 and actually just put it in the premium. So we can debate with the insurance company whether or not that claim is going to be $100,000 or not. But generally what we end up doing is we tell them then just put a cap on it, as make it a little bit higher deductible, and then we'll actually take the risk on our end. And the city's done that in the past, and we are going to encourage you to look at it again. Under the third option, and these first three options on the board are for a 12-month renewal, we have lasers out there that are going to total about $375,000, and that actually would drop the premium from $214 down to $161.98. And we do think that is, it's going to be prudent to go with the laser. Now, on the very tail end, our fourth option is we're asking and proposing that we change the plan to a January 1 renewal date so that the numbers that I'm looking at on the far end are going to represent 9 months worth of reinsurance coverage. That drastically drops the premium from the 161 down to 132. We still have the lasers out there, but because it's only for 9 months, the lasers are only going to total $285,000. And like I said, this is a very confusing slide. I really wanted it on here more for some of y'all who might want to crunch numbers and look at it so you can see where I got my other numbers from. But this is really, I think, the slide that best describes what we'd like to do. And again, I'm going to ask you to go down to the first yellow line. Is called the total fixed cost. And I'm on line page 9. And currently, where our total fixed cost for the year, which is going to be the reinsurance, the administrative fees, it's currently just at $457,000. If we renew as is for 12 months, we don't change the renewal date, we don't put any lasers into the group, then the actual fixed cost is going to go from $457 to $688. They think the claims are going to go up approximately 10% from $1.8 million to $1.9, just under $2 million. And when you put the two together, your fixed and expected would go from 2.1 to just over 2.5. And again, I want to point out the expected claims this year are probably going to be in about 1.6, even though this is showing 1.8. That's what the projection was. If we decide to stay with 12 months and accept the laser, then we go to column 3, and you can see our fixed cost goes to $559. The expected claims will still stay the same, and we see about a 2.4, I think it's 2.397 fixed and expected cost. What we're again recommending is the last column is to take this to a to a 9-month policy, it actually drops the fixed cost to just under 400,000, drops it to 367. The expected claims for this 9-month period are going to be, let me see if I'm reading that number right, it's going to be about 1.469 million. And so your total expected and fixed cost would be about 1.7 million. And what we would do is we would actually go back out to market in the August, September to re-look at the entire package again for 2020? Losing track, 2020. On the bottom, you can see your employee deductions, and the 208,599 represents your current deductions. It represents, if you accept the recommendations we made on the renewal, it actually keeps your deductions at the same level. And when you go over to the far right, to the last column, that number is less because it's only showing 9 months' worth of deductions. And so our recommendation is to continue right now with Meritain, to change it to the anniversary policy to 9 months, to January 1, and to accept the lasers that they've recommended. Now, one other caveat, and I had this on the other slide, and I apologize. The reinsurance proposals are still under evaluation. And what that means is we've actually, these numbers are worst-case scenario numbers from HCC. We have 2 other reinsurers who are looking at it, and we've gone back to them with additional data. The one reinsurer actually came in with lower claims expectation, but their fixed costs were higher. So we've actually gone back to all 3 of them again and asked them to firm them up. So we may end up with a little bit better numbers than what we're showing, but these numbers that we are showing are guaranteed and are the best numbers we have currently, but they could improve before we actually ask y'all to approve it.
So explain the laser.
Sure. What a laser means is, again, we buy reinsurance, which is at $60,000 on a person. If we have a condition on our case, and it happens on occasion, where I have somebody that we know is going to have a claim for $100,000, they know it's coming, it's going to be there. The insurance company has 2 things they can do. They can load our premium by $40,000 because insurance companies, unfortunately, are out to cover risk. And if they see a $100,000
Can you
claim,
explain that? Yeah.
so what we can do is we can accept a higher deductible on that one individual, and we keep the premium, and if the claim doesn't happen, we keep it.
Okay.
And a lot of times, they'll sit there and they'll look at a risk, and they're going to sit there and tell us that that's a $150,000 claim, and everything we're looking at is saying that claim ain't going to be more than $100,000, but yet they're loading in a substantial amount of premium. And I think last year you all actually had 3 lasers on the case that actually fell off. And so it's pretty common practice. And we can't give a whole lot of detail on them,
Right.
but it's basically we're
You're
accepting.
looking at what is out there and has been projected with those certain individuals with their
Yes.
medical history and that kind of thing.
That is correct.
No, this is a lot of information to take in, but it's very important because this is one of the biggest things we do for our employees. So I appreciate that, Matt. So for the purposes of tonight's approval for the committee, what staff and Matt is proposing is this 9-month renewal with the laser option included with Meritain, and also the associated fee schedules and deductibles as presented earlier, unless there's any questions or changes to that.
I just have a question about that wellness component of, and incentivizing those people and all of us for, reduction in our body mass and getting our blood pressure under control and trying to stop smoking or whatever, and your cholesterol. Where is that wellness component that assists our employees in getting those numbers down to get that deductible down to the $500 mark?
Right, I think I'm going to ask Les to maybe address that, because a lot of that comes through the clinic.
Right, and that's,
Yeah, currently the clinic, as you go and pick up your maintenance drugs, for instance, for cholesterol, they're going to sit and talk to you and make sure that you're taking those correctly, that you're doing things from a diet perspective that will help control those cholesterol numbers. The other thing that we're going to utilize a lot more than we did this year is the Aetna and Maritane disease management program. People just have to go to the website, self-elect to get that coaching, and then Maritane and Aetna will engage with them and do the same thing, essentially, that CARE-ATC is doing in the clinic when you pick up the medicine. So you'd be bombarded with coaching, tips on how to get this taken care of. The other thing that I would tell you is that I'm talking with the health athletic facilities in town, trying to work a deal where we can get really low rates for our associates to be able to go work out, because I think number one thing that we've got to do is just get people up off their, behinds and walking a little bit. I'm looking at, things I've talked with Logan about it, that we need to consider, how we incent people in the building to get up and take a walk at lunch or take a walk during the break times and that kind of thing. So we're going to look at a lot of different things like that, because obviously movement is the number one thing that helps people get on the chart, so.
Okay, thank you.
And just one more note about the 9-month premium period. The reason that's so beneficial for the associates, I think, anyway, is that we get our claims are figured on a calendar basis. We start the plan year, though, on April 1st. So a lot of people carry into the first part of the year thinking they've already satisfied deductibles and things, and they get hit with a brand-new deductible reset. And that's a horrible thing if all of a sudden you're planning on getting that little, surgery that you've been putting off for a couple of months and thinking you have the deductible met and you have to re-engage. The other thing is for finance, it's just going to be easier for them to be able to budget as well, so.
I have one comment and then a question, I guess. The comment is, I just want to really commend staff in working with, Mr. Bidwell and Les and everybody. Over the last 3 years, if I remember correctly, premiums to our employees have either stayed the same or gone down. It definitely has not been an increase. I think it's actually a decrease. You look at what's going on in the rest of the world, that's something to be said. And with that, I know this time it does include some increases, and I think they're, justifiable amounts of increase that we need to do, particularly with the out-of-pocket and then a small premium increase. Question I have, though, is on the premium increase for the employee alone is a significant percentage increase. I think it's around 24% increase in premiums for the employee. Well, for the family coverage, it's a 3 to 4% increase. And I just wondered, my question, I guess, is if we did this rather than this dollar amount that's specified in here, if it was done with something like, say, a 5% increase across the board, would that accomplish the same thing? And in my way I look at it, a fairer distribution of premium? That's the question.
Well,
Let me get to
I don't
that
know.
slide on.
I think one thing that we went for so long, and it was so extremely low, and we did not pace it like we should have. So now, even I think over the past couple of years, our employee rates have increased a little bit. Am I not right?
I thought they went down.
It, pretty much, we did a slight decrease last year, but they've either stayed the same or decreased the last, I believe, 3 years.
Has it been? Okay.
Yeah.
But out of all, it's what, $23 a month? Is that right?
Yeah, so, yeah, 1153 a pay period current.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is, I agree that it does increase, but at the same time, in the marketplace, you couldn't find a premium like that anymore.
I'm not disagreeing with the increase. I agree that we need to do the increase.
You just wondering if the 5%.
I'm just wondering if the
accommodates.
increase for employees could be the same percentage as the increase for a family coverage.
Well, is there a reason that one individual increases by 20%?
The others by 3 or 4. It's because of the premiums. To give you an example, the reason you go to a fixed dollar amount is because, again, we're trying to spread, we've got $22,000 that we want to make cost neutral to the city. If I try to do that on a level percentage across the board, 10% of $11 is $1.53. 10% of $172 is $17. And so I'm not saying it's going to be 10%, but now I'm looking at $1 versus $17, and there's a $17 real money difference. What I can tell you is this: if I took $1 off of what I'm charging a single employee, I would have to transfer $1.40 more to everybody who has a dependent covered. So if, if we said, well, we just wanted to make it $13.06, if we want to try to lower that number for because I've got about 119 employees and I've got 84 with dependents, every time I take $1 away from that single employee, I got to add $1.40 to somebody with a dependent to keep it cost neutral. And so, again, we use this simply because, from a risk standpoint, whether you're an adult employee or an adult spouse, those claims are going to be, those are on equal footing. And when I'm dealing with a family that has kids, we think that it's like divided into three. It's like you've got kids, you've got an adult spouse, and you got an employee. And so the actuarial numbers, you basically, if I increase the employee by a factor of 1, I increase the people with kids and spouses by a factor of 2, and people with full family a little bit over a factor of 3. And again, I'm getting more deep into the math. I didn't mean to, but we just try to be fair. That's what the insurance companies call being fair. But ultimately, it's your all's decision in terms of what you all feel best suits your all's population. So we're here just to, whatever you all feel is
Majority
appropriate.
of our people only have employee coverage, correct?
I'm sorry.
Majority of the employees have employee-only coverage.
119, and we have 84 with families, employee and families.
Matt, based on this being less than $23,000 of a gap to cover, the 23,000, do you feel it would be prudent if we rolled the dice a little bit and hope for a better outcome of the plan year to absorb this?
One thing
what
to
you're
point out, by making this change, those claim projections are going to be about 4% lower. So you take 4% of almost $2 million, I mean, it's not like we're not paying for it. So if you all decided you don't want to even make a change on the deductions,
Right.
I think you're going to, we're trying to be very safe on our projections, and I did not put any of those benefit changes into the final pages. But again, it's your all's.
So with that said, we were being overly cautious here and just trying to be deficit neutral, cost neutral, as you were saying.
Is there a number somewhere, what is an employee cost? Full cost?
To the city,
Yeah.
so generally, we're budgeting, I think it was around $10,000 per employee in this
Now,
past
that does
budget.
include both employee-only coverage as well as family.
Yeah, so, because we don't know what they're gonna take, that's what we budget across the board for all employees.
So in other words, divide that by 26, and that's the biweekly premium for the insurance overall.
More or less, that's how we're budgeting that.
And we're asking them to pay 1406 of that
Yes.
amount. Okay. That makes it seem reasonable.
Okay, what we need from the committee is a recommendation to the full council for next week to approve or amend or whatever you want to do. So I'm entertaining a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We will present that to full council next week.
Thank you all.
Next item
Thank you.
on our agenda is the property and casualty insurance renewal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Carson Seville. I'm filling in for Bob tonight. He's in a courtroom in Gwinnett County, stuck on jury duty. So he called me a few hours ago and asked if I'd come present this to y'all. So I believe you each have a copy of this premium summary in your packet. I'm just going to go through some of the changes for this year. If y'all could glance down at the bottom to start off, we'll start with the airport liability. So the past few years, we've been relatively flat premium with this. This particular year, they took rate, which this is a small coverage in general, so we're only talking about $600. They've also increased the deductible. But as I said, with that compared to the limits of $5 million, $10 million, it really shouldn't cause any issues. If you jump up to the auto section, this is the main bulk of the increase. I want to say first off that Bob and I spoke with the carrier. There's no rate included in any of this premium. All of the increases are solely based upon exposure increases. So the past year, we added around 23 units, and we removed 9. The 9 we removed are older units, and the majority of the 23 units that we added are 2017, 2018 new models, Crown Vics, Rams. So that nets 12 units that we've added, and that's the bulk of your premium. The rest of those cancel out. And those autos being added also affects your general liability slightly and in the umbrella, but not much to worry about. And the third option I'd want to mention is the cyber liability. We've met with Debbie midterm on this policy and added a few additional coverages to this. I'm not sure if y'all have a copy of the quote in the packet or not, but we basically got all the coverages available with this particular carrier. Cyber's an evolving coverage. It's constantly changing. There's constantly new ways to have claims, and so we wanted to protect the city as best we could. It's relatively small premium, and it's really one of those things that you don't think it can happen until it does, and then you're in trouble. So with that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has for me.
Does the auto include the potential 6 new vehicles we'll be adding next week?
I can put them on there tomorrow. But the way this policy reads, the second we get them in, is as long as they're under $750,000 per vehicle, equipment, or property, it's added automatically. There's actually no endorsements or
Okay.
AP return premium, additional premium involved. And that's one great attribute about this carrier. But no, if they're being sent tomorrow, then yes, we'll get them added to the current policy in force right now, and then we can update this. Actually, with us presenting tonight, they might
Well,
even
not
just
that
add
they're
them.
they could be ordered. That'll be a
Okay,
council
yeah,
decision, but
we'd
I
get them
didn't know if,
taken care of.
It'll be a couple months before that would be added on.
Okay, so then, if it's going to be a couple months, then no, there wouldn't be an additional premium for them right now or during the policy term, and then they just,
they would
next
just
year.
go on because
Yes,
they're
ma'am.
under.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Hearing none, I need a motion to recommend the approval of the property and casualty insurance renewal to full council.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll present that to full council next week. Next item on the agenda is the utility deposit update. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. This is the utility deposit policy. We're asking for an update to the policy that has been in place for a very long time that has not been updated. This came up, it comes up several times a year, and it's came up in doing the utility billing conversion to the new software, the way that deposits are set up in the system and the way that they would have to be set up going forward. I brought it before Logan to see if it was something that we could possibly change. Currently, a residential customer, when they pay their deposit, we hold that deposit for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, if they have not had any services interrupted, in other words, they haven't been cut off for any kind of non-payment due to non-payment their bill or non-payment of a return check, we will then refund credit their deposit to their bill, and we still hold $50 until the end of time, until they leave the city of Monroe. Now, that $50 doesn't really do us a whole lot of good, I should say, if they leave us with a bad debt, because $50 is not going to take care of any portion of their, it'll take care of $50 of their bill, but it's not going to take care of a lot of their bill. And so and typically those customers are the good customers, I should say. They're not the ones that are going to leave us with a bad debt, because they've been here for 5 years. They paid well, they paid on time, they haven't gotten cut off, they haven't had return checks and things of that nature. So what we're asking is to change some wording in that policy to read that we still hold that deposit for 5 years, but at the end of 5 years, we don't hold that $50, that we refund and credit their bill for the entire amount of their deposit at that end of that 5 years. I'll answer any questions you might have.
How many customers do you think we have?
I don't have an
Like that.
exact number. I would be guessing if I said. We do this monthly, and we manually have to do it, and we have maybe a handful, maybe 5 or 6 a month, if even that.
And note
I am
that this accumulates interest on those customer deposits, and that interest will be refunded to the customer.
Oh,
Yes,
Let's say they're 100 a year, it's $5,000 plus interest.
right, yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Outside of committee, we need to reserve questions for next week, correct?
We'll be,
No, ask.
unless the committee chairs want to ask.
You can ask
Okay.
your question.
That deposit is based on a credit score, correct?
Your initial deposit, a new customer, that deposit is based on their credit score and what services they may have. If they have full service and they have a very good credit score, then they have no deposit. If they have a bad credit score, then it could be upwards of $500. So, yes, if they have a deposit, it was based on their credit score at the time they got services. So 5 years from now, they could have increased their credit score and and obviously, at that point, they're a good customer in standing with us.
Well, and I guess the point of that, the question too, or another question on top of that is there no opportunity for a reevaluation of a credit score after a year or 2 years or however long?
We do not currently have that in place, no.
Gotcha. That's all I had.
But since we do have a number of accounts that do not have deposits, then this, after the 5 years, it seems to make sense that we don't hold a deposit.
And it's really a bookkeeping nightmare,
Yeah.
because we're having to
Well,
manually.
some that we do and some that we don't.
Right, yeah.
If everybody had one, it might be different.
Yeah, it would be.
I'll make the motion that we accept the policy change.
Okay, you have a motion. Do I have a second?
second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We'll recommend that policy change to full council next week. And thank you, Mayor. That concludes our agenda items this evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That was a bit of a longer monthly session than normal. Moving to the airport committee, Mr. Garrett.
Chris?
Good things to report. I did include a chart that kind of shows the avgas fuel prices around this region, this area, and I'd always kind of touted that we are one of the lower prices around. We're actually, your average cost in this area is $4.71 a gallon. We're at $4.39 currently, the third lowest in the region. So that's been a good thing, and that's what's fueled our traffic, essentially, at the airport to actually buy fuel. Project updates. The East Apron Rehabilitation Expansion Project is 99.9% complete. They have one manhole to lower. Final inspection with DOT, engineers, ER Snell, and ourselves will be February 14th, at which point we'll close out this project and be done. We should come in somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 under budget. So that'll be a good help to then cover the west side that looks like we're gonna probably incur an additional 15,000 potentially. However, if our paving comes in with the way everything looks, we should only be about $2,000 over that initial amount that I had requested of $103,000 to do that west taxi lane. So I think everything's going to work out to where we're pretty well off and we're pretty well covered. The DOT and City of Monroe, we're currently in discussions to allow for that under budget number to help cover some of the material costs for the west side. So we should, I kind of feel like we're going to get both projects done for the cost of one, is what it's going to come down to. So fingers crossed, and we'll keep working on that. The only other thing I have is DOT has their annual inspection scheduled for February 13th, this coming Wednesday, at which point we'll find out if we're out of compliance on anything else that's potentially changed. But I don't believe we will in any significant manner. So any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
So what you're saying is the low cost of the avgas fueled increased sales?
Yes.
Just wondering how you use that.
Clever play on words.
Anybody have any more questions? That'll be all.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Public Works, Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no action items. We just have reports. Solid waste.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. In your package, you've got two reports, tonnage reports, one for the month of December, and the one I want to highlight is the annual report. We collected we had an increase of 2% in 2018 at 13,000 tons. Cost us a little over $407,000 in tipping fees. Our recycling tonnage declined 2% at 1,681 tons. That's like 11% diversion rate. But it did reduce our tipping fees a little over $52,000 to right under $355,000 in tipping fees. And the main impact was City of Monroe was busy last year, so we did generate a good bit of waste. And the recycling industry was just down last year altogether. So we had a lot of material end up in landfills, particularly glass. So it's weighted. So that's the reason why the decline, and this compared to 2017. Update on the transfer station projects. They're still pending. We'll be starting soon. The last couple of projects, they're a little smaller, the welding inside the building, and we are going to replace the sprinkler system. That's fire protection. They got held up due to the overflow inside the building. We did meet with our partners on January 28th and discuss our transportation agreement, and up to this point, they responded. So we should be able to get into the building next few weeks and get those knocked out. The only other thing I have that's not in my notes, so I just want to give you an update on the transfer station tonnage for the year, and we had a good year. Tonnage increased 4,000 tons to 67,984 tons for the year, generating $2.7 million in revenue. And so it should have been able to take care of that whole operation. Only other thing I have, we are extending the Friday schedule from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock for the remainder of this month. We're kind of doing it month to month, just kind of analyzing how it's working out. But we will be open to 5 o'clock on Fridays for the rest of February. Take any questions you might have.
I have a question. At GMA last week, recycling of glass came in as a big positive, but we're not taking it. Do we have somebody else that can jump on that? I know our county recycling center still takes glass.
Yeah, there's a good market for glass. That's not the problem. Our issue is just trying to get it to strategic material will drop us a bin. We just want to make sure we get a good way of handling it and getting it to the bin. So that's what we're working on, getting it from the curb. And basically what we could do is just, the customers that's already recycling, we can just give them an additional bin and just separate it and have it from the curb and get it to
I think
the
that would,
bin.
I think that would be ideal. You know, I think we've probably all been trained, especially with glass and plastic bottles. And now they just sit on the counter because we don't really want to throw them in the trash. So an extra container would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, we are really pursuing it. We just want to make sure we got, and even compactor, there was a myth saying compactor may not be a good idea because it's crushing the glass, but according to Strategic, that's not really a problem either. So we're going to look really hard at trying to get it going, maybe within the next 3 or 4 months. Let's try to give out something to where we can start back collecting it.
Would be great.
And also, in the class I was in, one idea in order to try to promote recycling, but at the same time ease into it, was to do a recycling pickup every other week instead of every week, but at the same time provide the carts versus the bins.
Yes, yes.
And I know could that be a possibility with us with the new truck we have that
Well,
is versatile?
We can work on it. We can make it work. The new automated truck is pretty much designed to mobilize our personnel, our staff, and of course make us more efficient. But it will free up a truck that we can get real creative about.
I mean, that was just the idea that came up that some cities had.
Yeah, and the bins are, it's a capital purchase. I know Recycling Partnership do give grants that will actually pay for the cards. Yeah, so we working on it. It's an 18-month process in order to get to the grant portion of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny.
All right. Streets and transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Our monthly report, there's really nothing special to highlight in there. You're welcome to look at it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on there. Just some updates, what we're doing now. We recently finished a sidewalk project we had on Bold Springs Avenue and a curb replacement at Midland Avenue. They turned out really good. We just have a few ADA infrastructure elements that we need to go back and add to actually complete those. This week, we started sidewalk replacement on William Street, right across the building here. Our crews actually started beginning the excavation of the old sidewalk this morning. Hopefully, we'll only be over there in that area for a few weeks, depending on the weather. Once we complete William Street, we'll all move back over here and pick up progress back on Highland, right behind Rodney's crews, putting in the water line, completing that sidewalk project we started. Our leaf truck is continuing to run every day. We've seen a large increase in volume of leaves this year, but fortunately, we haven't had many equipment failures like we normally do, so that's been moving along. The only thing that's slowing us down here and there is the rain. So we'll continue to work on that. Right now, we're still looking at about a 3-week turnaround that it takes them to get through the entire route. They're maintaining that. On average, our crews are picking up between about 20,000 to 24,000 pounds of leaves a day on that truck. So, I mean, they're picking it up. It's out there.
What about limbs? Because that seems to be delayed.
That would actually be on Mr.
Limbs.
Smith.
Limb,
Limb pickup?
to my knowledge, we were on schedule. It may, occasionally, we may have set out after the schedule pickup, and then it comes to the following week before they get out. So I'll check and see, because I don't know, we were.
Fairway Drive, we weren't picked up yesterday.
Okay. We'll be there tomorrow.
It's not mine.
That's fine.
I wish you could leave a notice.
Yeah, we do
in the,
have.
Mailboxes that the limbs don't go in the street. They literally
Absolutely.
need to be on the side of the property line because it's a deterrent. I mean, we are having to get out in the middle of the street.
Okay, and then too, there are some customers maybe over the limit, and he will kind of notify us, and then we will
Let
contact him.
them know. Okay,
Yeah, so that
thank
could
you.
be it too.
Yes, it could.
All right, thank you, Danny. And the only last thing I have, as reported in the, or as noted in the report, is we continue to battle the litter on the right-of-ways. You know, we're daily picking that up. Our crews, along with Chris's ground crew, I mean, they're doing a good job, but it's a continual battle that we fight every day. But we'll continue to work on that to try to get it all up.
Chris, in your opinion, what is it? Is it that people don't care, that they just throw stuff out? Is it uncovered vehicles?
Yes.
I don't have, yes. I mean, there's many streets throughout this city that we can pick up today, and tomorrow morning on my way in, it's right there again. That's why I say it's a never-ending battle. I don't have the answer for it, but
Did we ever put out more signs? We talked to Jeremiah about that, of posting more signs for litter.
I do know, I think some have been put out. I don't know how many and what areas, but I can get with him to, get you that information. I'm not really sure.
I have a question, if I understood you correctly. The sidewalk on William Street, is that being replaced by our staff?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Brown. Yes.
Because I had thought we were looking at sidewalks of contractors.
Yeah, so the minor replacements, short stretches, we can still do in-house. We already have the staff to do that.
And
but-
we're doing Williams and Highland, is that what I understood?
That's correct, yes. We've actually already started Highland, but Ronnie's crews moved in to do the water line down through it and Wayne, so we paused that while they did their work so that we can, then go back behind them.
Okay. Highland I wouldn't consider minor, but.
Well, it's kind of been done in phases, but any longer stretches, we're looking at going other routes.
Yeah. I said I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
All right, that's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving to utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Little.
Monthly electric and telecom report.
Thank you, sir. Since the rain finally slowed up a little bit, we've been getting on a lot of projects. I just want to highlight a few of those. If you've been out Spring Street lately, you've probably seen my crews. We've got conduit, piping, and boxes for lighting put in, all in front of Quality Food, and all up in front of George Walton Academy, and a few other short spots in there. Also, the trees have started going in. We're doing this in different sections because of other facilities in the way in some smaller sections in there. We're just going to have to work a little more careful. There's a Comcast line, there's some water lines, there's some stuff we've got to work around in the other sections, and the work will just go a little slower. So we're hitting the spots so we can get a lot done quickly first, and then we're moving on to the next section. So you'll see us jumping back and forth. There's also some redesign going on that project that is going to cause us to skip those sections completely until that redesign and construction is complete. Stone Creek, subdivision off of Church Street. All the conduits in, the primary poles were set today, so we should start pulling in primary cable either the end of this week or first of next week. Second and Barrett Street are in conjunction with the Mill apartment complex that is going in. We're building a line, and you've probably seen us and everybody else working down there. We're building a line down Second Street back around down Barrett. Now, that's going to give us several things. It's going to let us backfeed the hodgepodge section of the Mill project so they can continue work on their retention ponds on the front side of that project. They basically are digging the retention ponds right over the top of our facilities. So to be able to feed those in an efficient way, we're coming around the back. It also gets us the capability to have three-phase on the back of Barrett that we just never had. And if the Felker property ever develops, we'll have a very easy way to feed that project. We will eventually, in the future, take that all the way to Alcovey Street, and then we'll have a secondary feeder to go around any problems in the system downtown. Silver Queen's moving forward. We met with the owners and have come up with a way to feed that building. You might not have noticed this because it's all happening in the back, but Wow Express up north of town is putting in an automated car wash like out here in front of Tractor Supply. We've been working with them on getting the three-phase. It's a different voltage than what they've normally used, so we're doing a lot of work to make that happen. And then the North Broad lights have actually gone fairly smooth so far. We're putting in conduit facilities under any concrete or asphalt that may be placed in the way. So we're prepared for that. Once he's out of the way, we can roll in and stick the lights in. On telecom, our lasers for our second CMTS have been delayed till first part of March. But the first phase has been done. We've seen a lot less slowness in the network. The network is actually up. We're only running about 60% of capacity now. I will bring to you next month, y'all all know we're doing the water line all the way to Loganville. We have a limited number of fibers between here and Loganville right now. And we have looked at designing, well, we actually have designed, putting in a four-way micro duct between here and Loganville while that ditch is open. That ditch costs money. If I had to go in and put that pipe in the ground myself, it cost me $8 a foot. If we just lay it in there with a water line, it just cost me the conduit, which is about 50 to 70 cents a foot. That gives you the capacity to put almost 400 more fibers between here and Loganville, and you can either lease those to telecom companies or you can do more work. We're actually doing a lot more work with the county right now in their facilities, in their fire departments, in their governmental buildings. Hank and I have worked real well together on getting those facilities lit up on their network. So that's one project we'll bring to you. And then IPv6, you may not be familiar with what this actually means, but every device on the internet has an IP address. Well, IPv6 went into effect several years ago. And normally what you use is IP version 4. We're selling internet pretty quick and our numbers are dwindling down. So we're going to be looking at doing an IPv6 conversion sometime this year. It is basically a device you put on your network or a service you pay for monthly that does a network translation. There are no more IPv4 numbers available, and there are billions of IPv6 numbers available. So that's something you'll hear more out of me in the next few months. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Did we get that Windstream disconnect from the Silver Queen?
No, but we have worked with Windstream and put them in contact with one of the building owners on the back, and they've got a solution now. So hopefully we'll be moving forward with that soon. I have worked with the construction team for the building, and where it's sitting now is not in the way till later on in the construction. But as Logan will tell you, I'm on them, once or twice a week, I'm sending them emails and talking to them about it.
Well, thank you for staying on them.
Thank you for the report, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Now, you've got an item to bring up, Call Tower resale partner agreement.
Yes, sir. We have bought our dial tone historically from Broad River. It's an Atlanta company. They supply all of our dial tone. And normally going through a cable modem, that's our normal tunnel to get to the home is through a cable modem. It's just a standard phone. Well, Broad River was bought out by Call Tower several months ago, and they're doing away with the Broad River name. And they have a much more advanced set of services that we could resell through them. And occasionally we get that need where a customer asks, can you do this for me, or can you do that for me? One of the big things is hosted phone systems, or the ability to have your phone follow you. What we are asking to do is for you to approve this agreement for us to be able to sell those services from Broad River to our existing customers.
What is posted phone services?
Basically, you don't have to buy a phone system. You have a phone system that sits in the cloud. I think that's what you're doing now through Broad River at your office.
Okay.
Yeah, you're already doing it, and so we transitioned you over to fiber, I think, today or yesterday at some point. And instead of having that issue we had with you today where they supplied the equipment and they had a gateway issue, we would be supplying the equipment and that wouldn't have happened.
Okay. That makes sense.
Smaller companies like that just don't want to put the money into a hardware phone system like we have here at the office. And if you don't have to do that, but you can still get the versatility of it, we want to be able to supply that to our customer.
Is there a motion to recommend full council the Call Tower Resale Partner Agreement?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Bradley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We recommend that to full council next week.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, I believe you got another item here, the overhead and underground wiring policy amendment.
Yes, sir. Logan had challenged us to simplify our policies for development. And we had a policy that was written back in the 06, 07 era that covered our ratepayers. Basically, a developer could not come in, build a development, and then walk away, or let's just say what happened in 08 with the Breelove, with, what is that, Mill Creek on Breelove Drive. We had a $250,000, or the developer had a $250,000 investment in the infrastructure because we had this policy in place. And when they left, it was 6 or 8 years before anything was built, and no revenue was made off of that. And if we hadn't had this policy in place, our ratepayers would have carried that cost for those years. So what we had was a policy that said, you come in, we design your project, and then we come up with a dollar amount by bidding the work and bidding the materials. Well, that takes months. 06, 07, it was okay because money was easy, for lack of a better term, at banks and at the loaning institutions. It's not that way anymore. You have to have when you're going to do a development, you've got to have a rock-solid number. So what we did on this underground version is we went with Electric City's help. We took all of the cost in this latest development out here at Mr. Dixon's project, and we took that and broke it down on a per-lot basis. What did it cost us? You know, each lot cost X. Well, we came out at right at $2,500 per lot. And what we're asking you to do in this policy is to approve that $2,500 per lot when they come in the door. They know what that number is the day they get this piece of paper, and this is what it costs you per lot to get your electric facilities put in. Our ratepayers will not bear the cost of a development. And we have Electric Cities look at the cost every year in December, and that change of that cost goes into effect January 1. That way, as material costs goes up, labor costs go up, we don't sink down, we don't get behind with that deal. Now, we've never had an overhead development cost, but that was one thing suggested by Electric Cities. We just haven't done an overhead development in forever. But you may do one of those in the future. And if we do, we need to have a process for that. So we added that in at a suggested cost from ECG at $500 per lot or unit. That won't completely recover your cost, but overhead is much, much cheaper to deploy than underground. The other couple of things that we did change is we have some design fees installed there, but they are refundable at the end of the engineered product. So let's say a developer comes in and we design that and we charge them to design it. Once they complete that project as designed, we give them the money back. That incentivizes them to finish the project, number one, but if they do come in and they get halfway done with the project, and we were expecting a certain amount of revenue off of that project and they didn't complete it, we get to keep that money to help buffer that a little bit. It's not much, but it's a little bit. And that's about it. Most of the changes in here were to simplify it, basically to let everyone know that we have to follow our specification book, and we have to follow all the OSHA national standards when we install something. That clarifies some issues where I can, and I'll also tell you where I can and can't put a transformer. They have to be at a certain distance from from any building. They have to be a certain distance from where people are outside setting. They have to be just in a safe place. But I think what this does for the developer is they know exactly what they're running into when they walk in the door, instead of having a lot of questions that could take 2 to 4 months to answer.
Question, if this was a small infill development of 5 or 6 houses, are they covered, is their cost the same thing as for a large development?
Yes, sir.
Per lot?
And really, your only difference was the length of wire.
Yeah.
And so factoring those metrics in there, as we discussed, didn't move the needle a lot beyond that 2,500 or less than that $2,500 mark too much.
You still got labor, you still got conduit, you still got wire, and you still got transformers. And that basically works out to that $22 to $25.
I think we discussed at the planning meeting of encouraging infill development of 5 or 6 houses at a time or something. How that would fit into this.
It's just a known up front. When they come to us and have their pre-cons about a development, we can just hand them this sheet.
It has been lately, well, not the past few years, it has been sort of hard for me to sit there and say, well, I've got to design this, I've got to bid that. I don't know your cost until we do that. And it makes it hard on the developer and hard on me because I don't have an answer for him. And I would rather have an answer.
Do you know if other utilities do this?
A lot of the electric cities and some smaller EMCs do what we were doing, the exact cost. Whatever the cost is what you pay. A lot of the larger EMCs, they somehow absorb, well, they got, over 100, 200,000 meters. They try to absorb it, and they're trying to build their footprint. They're trying to make that footprint bigger. Georgia Power is a set cost, and is, from what Mr. Dixon told me, it's between $2,000 and $3,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tyler?
So the way this differs from '06 is that on a 75-lot subdivision, that developer was required to put down $250,000 roughly in infrastructure.
Could be, it may
Could be
be.
up to.
Whatever it cost.
Right.
If it cost X, it cost X.
And on that particular one you referenced, it was
It was
about
257, 258, if I remember
That's 75
correctly.
lots. Okay, but today, we're just going to look at a 2,500 per home.
What we did is we took Mr. Dixon's project, which costed out at 2,500 per home.
Right.
It was actually 2,555 for the first 49 lots, the first phase, whatever those numbers were, and broke it down to that. $2,500 easy. We revisit this with ECG every December, and then that cost is adjusted, whether it's up or down. Doubt it will ever go down just because copper never goes down and steel never goes down. That's the biggest cost in this, are copper, steel, and labor.
And so he puts that 2,500 per lot deposit down, correct?
Well, he pays it.
He pays it
Yes, ma'am.
at the upfront, first stage of development, so
And
you
then we
can
go
get
to
in
work.
there and do your work during the, okay.
And it cuts out that,
It's just part of the development cost, whether it be a
Development
meter, this is.
just like them putting in the water sewer.
Okay.
And that cuts out that, well, if we did it the old way, it takes me, it's gonna still take me 3 to 4 weeks to design it,
Right.
but then I've gotta go back to Chris and get them to bid it. Then I gotta go out and reach out to all these other people before I even get him a cost. So I'm sitting there 30 days out on Chris's work, 30 days out on the guys trying to get the design work, and he still doesn't know his cost. Whereas we still gotta go through that process, but he already knows and he's moving forward. Just cuts out time.
And a PUD or an R1A development, the cost doesn't vary that much, whether it's an R1 development with a larger lot versus an R1A smaller lot.
The biggest cost in any development is the labor and the wire. You're still gonna have labor and wire, and you're still gonna have the same amount of transformers, because that transformer, certain size transformer, can only feed so many homes. So whether the houses are here to the wall or half a mile down the road, you still gotta have that certain amount of transformers. And
I'm with Larry
we're gonna
now.
win and lose on some of these anyway, if you think about it, because it's gonna average out. You're gonna have a development that comes in under that $2,500. You're gonna have some that come in a little over that $2,500. But what we're trying to do with that 2,500 is meet that average that allows the developer to do their project, but doesn't put any weight on the ratepayer.
But on that labor side, on a development that's an infill development, and you've got a total of 15 homes, is it fair to put 2,500 on that particular developer versus,
It's hard to figure that
because of,
number.
I mean, I'm just thinking labor
I
costs.
don't know the project.
You see where I'm coming from? I know it's hard to figure.
Yeah, without seeing the project, I can't tell you the number. So we're just doing the best average we can to meet that number. And it's an educated guess, I will tell you that. It is going to be, again, some projects we're going to be a little high, some projects we're going to be a little low, but I think most of these developers, the ones I've talked to, time is more important to them than a few dollars. Because they're borrowing money to do the project anyway, so they're having to pay on that loan. We're trying to get them in and selling houses as quickly as possible.
What's the biggest variable per lot in development that's?
Well, I'll just take Mr. Dixon's. His deal, his development has very small lot lines. So it changed the number of, you want to have room for transformers and driveways in some yards. So instead of having multiple transformers, we had less transformers, but we had more wire. So that changed that, and more conduit. So on a lot that doesn't have a transformer set out, you'll go, I think you can see this in Evergreen, which is an EMC project. They have little feed-through or service pedestals sitting around. Well, now you've got more, instead of, you would think, less transformers, less money. Well, not really, because you have more conduit and more wire.
But the average price, that was a big project. But it was small lots. Well, an infill project, being a small one, the price would most likely be comparable?
Could be. It just depends on looking at the project. I'd have to look at it and see it. Without engineering it, this is the same question I get from a lot of people every day is, what's it going to cost me to do X? Well, I don't know, because I haven't seen X.
That's what I'm trying to grasp is what's the big difference in the engineering?
Midland.
I would
We could-
hope that we approve this month. When the new policy comes out to promote some of the infill, we take a look at this and how it would fit in and whether or not it's the same thing at that point in time.
The next one, the next infill project that comes along, we can sit down and look at that and see what that design figure is going to be, and I can come up with another number, if it is another number. But working with the projects that we and Electric Cities have worked on lately, this is a good number.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the policy change.
Motion by Mr. Adcock, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bradley? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We recommend that to council. Mr. Middlebrooks, do you have a monthly water, sewer, gas, and stormwater report?
Thank you, Mr. Little. Just a quick update on a couple of projects that came over from 18 and then some new ones in 19. One new one in the gas is a private drive neighborhood. It's 5 lots out on Dean Hill Road. It's requested gas service. We're currently installing that with our crews. Young Street gas main replacement just finished about 2 weeks ago. Everything went well there. In the sewer collection department, the 2nd Street sewer main rehab, Main Street, Walton Mill, and the Felkers have agreed to split the cost of the material to upgrade the sewer line along 2nd Street. When those houses were torn down, that line was abandoned. And since then, roots and the lack of maintenance or anything on it is gone. Down to the water distribution, the city crews have finished the Wayne Street, Highland Avenue water line. They began Monday tying over the old services or services on the old main over to the new main. That should be completed tomorrow. And then be starting the water main extension along Radford Street. This to serve the Graceful Manor, the assisted living facility that's going in the old Grace Baptist Church there on Mears. And then at the water plant, we nearing completion of the offices. HVAC guys are finishing up this week. The painter's got the prime coat on. We should be ready for floor covering in about 2 weeks. So that's finishing up pretty quick. And then we also started landscaping today. All the trees and shrubs are installed. We basically matched the city hall landscape as far as what they did recently. And that's all I've got. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
The assisted living, one in the church, is that ever behind Ms. Rita's?
Yes.
Any other question? Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
That's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody. Public safety, Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, we'll have Chief Owens tell us, give us the monthly fire department report.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. We were just closing out the year as far as the end of our year report, and so I just added a couple of things to our report. We did close out with just over 2,700 calls for the fire department in 2018. Some of the things I did add to this end of the year report was the fire loss save report, which shows that we did have almost $600,000 worth of fire property damage in the city last year, but we did manage to save $3.9 million in property from fire loss. The other point that we have had a 32% increase over the last 5 years in total call volume, which is pretty standard. We have data going back well over 30 years now, so about every 5 years we are increasing that, about 33% increase. So I did want to point that out to you. And of course, we did have the other highlights from last year. We did have our safer hires. We did do live fire training. We did finish our training facility. And then, of course, our awarded grants from Global, which was really good for the smoke alarms and things of that nature that we started programs that we've done in the city. The only other notes I have that are significant from last month, just rebounding on that, is we're almost done with our Firefighter 2 training program to have everybody in the department up on that. And our recruit program is going to be starting this month. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Chief Owens, one of the highlights, you put on was the new fire training. Could you elaborate on what that's meant to the fire department?
You know, I can't say enough about the safer, the new hires. That was so huge for the department. But the training facility was hands down one of probably the biggest advantages that we got within the department last year. And it's going to carry over for decades and decades. And it actually gives the firefighters somewhere to train. You can just do so much. You can pull the trucks out of the bay and just do so much out there in the bay floor at the end of the day, you know, but having a place that we can go, that we can train, we can do ladder training, we can climb up on the buildings, and we can set this one on fire and use it again and again and again. It's probably been one of the hugest benefits that y'all have allowed for the fire department to have. That's going to last for decades and decades. It's going to ultimately help hundreds of firefighters, you know, and serve our citizens. So that's a huge benefit for us.
And I assume council members would be welcome to come out and watch you when you're training?
We will tell you every time we light a fire, promise you.
You just let everybody know about the training out there at the training facility. I think people might be interested in coming out.
Absolutely.
From the police department, we're going to look at, before the chief gives his report, though, on this one, I'd like to just make a comment. If you look at his report, on the second page of his report, I think, is the statistics from the 911 center. And if you look at that, last year, they had about 400,000 calls come into the 911 center here. And I felt very fortunate last week that the chief gave me a ride out to the 911 center and got to go in and observe what they were doing. And I can tell you, that's my first time to be inside that center. And to see the opportunity to talk to some of those dispatchers and watch them operate was an amazing thing. That I would just encourage any other council members that haven't been there. I think if you talk to Jorge, he would be happy to set it up for you to go out and visit. But the way they've got multiple screens they're looking at, they got multiple phone calls going on at the same time. They may be talking to the Monroe Police Department and they talking to a fire department at the same time. I mean, you know, and the way they handled it, it's something to behold. That Walton County and the city of Monroe and the other jurisdictions have something that I'd be really proud of, and I would hope somebody get a chance to take a look at it. But you can see the statistics there on how many jurisdictions they're taking phone calls for with the sheriff's department, the various police departments in around the sheriff's department and the various fire departments in the county. They're taking care of all these all at the same time with these dispatchers, and they do an amazing job. I just wanted to point that out. I want to thank the chief for arranging for me to go out and visit last week. So now I'll turn it over to you for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. And that was a good trip, and I do think that our dispatchers are not noticed enough and recognized enough, so I appreciate you taking that time to recognize what they do for us here. In the month of December, it was our lowest call volume of the year, which was 2,761 calls for service. We ended up the year answering a total of 40,000 calls, 569, which, you know, is in line with basically what we do on an average each year, 40,000 calls. One of the significant things I'd point out on our report here is our Part 1 crimes, which is your major felonies, is down 29% this year than what it was from last year, which we're very proud of that. Our officers participated in 9 different community events. One of the most significant events that we take part of each year in December is when we do the Shop with a Hero. This year, I think we sponsored more kids than we ever have. It was a total of about 70 kids, and we were able to, with the donations that were received from the community, to spend about $200 on each kid. And that is truly a blessing. You know, if you never have been a part of that, I would recommend each year when we do that, come out and see it, because these are families that otherwise we're not going to be able to provide anything for their children that year. And these kids are very grateful and thankful. We've received letters, handwritten letters from these kids to the police department saying thank you for that. And, you know, it goes along with that saying, you know, it's better to give than receive. And I mean, that's just a blessing. So I would, you know, offer and recommend, if you guys ever get a chance, come out with us when we do that. We did 3 separate events on this. We did one initial, and we had funds left over, and we had other families coming forward saying they needed help. So we did it again, and then right here at the end, we had more families come forward. And again, we had the funds left over, so we were able to do 3 separate events and support these families. And last but not least, what I want to recognize also is in the month of December, we had 2 brand-new officers graduate from the Police Academy, one of which is here tonight. I'd like to introduce him to you. This is Officer Walter Clough, one of our new hires. And if you can, after the council tonight, just make sure to introduce yourself to him. He's a go-getter. He's coming to us from Florida. And even as young as he is in his career, when he came here, he'd already received, I believe I'm right on this, you already received the Life-Saving Award once already in Florida, right? Yes, sir. That's something to be commended for, you know, at a young age in his career. And that's about all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And we appreciate him bringing the Florida February weather with him.
Yes.
Exactly.
Any questions for the chief on the report? Then I'm going to ask him if he would give us a report on a training program.
Okay, we had on the agenda tonight for out-of-state training. This is for the basically PIO. It's media and public relations. I had 2 officers that I was wanting to send to this PIO school. The school was being put on by the FBI LEDA, which is the Law Enforcement Executive Development Association. They had this class that was going on in Florida, and we already had everything prepared. We were coming to you tonight, asked for approval for that. And today, as we were researching on that class again, we seen in late January that the FBI leader is putting on this same class in Gwinnett County. So we're actually wanting to withdraw that from tonight. We don't need to approve the out-of-state training. We'll be able to do this in June in Gwinnett County.
And then we have a item on the agenda for some additional police vehicles. Are you handling that, or?
I believe Mr. Bailey's going to be
Turn that
handling
over
that.
to Mr. Bailey, who's
You got me.
overseeing the purchasing.
With the policy change that we had done, pre-approved items in the budget, CIP, received pre-approval essentially with details and whatnot. So I'm bringing this to you more for clarity base and some things that were adjusted in the lease agreement. And I know there were several presentations last year, and I just kind of wanted to clear up so we all have a solid understanding of how the enterprise lease agreement works for us to obtain police vehicles going forward. So the request is essentially for the purchase or the lease purchase agreement of 6 new 2019 Chevrolet Tahoes, fully outfitted. The budget number was for $95,000. The request, based on the payments over a 12-month period, are for $67,711.68. And like I think it's been explained, and I know Chief Watts has probably during the budget process, Chief Glass did in previous year, this helps us speed up acquiring new police vehicles. If we were going through the process that I would go through, and essentially we have far less buying power than Enterprise does. I mean, we're looking September, October, November before we get these vehicles. With the lease program that we perform through Enterprise, we're looking at a 12 to a 14-week lead time. So that gets them here much quicker. They're fully outfitted. They're ready to deploy into the field. To go back to an earlier question I believe you asked on the property casualty, these 6 vehicles are not on there. They will go on there once they're received. But at that time, there will be 5 to 6 that are taken out of the fleet and then are sold. And obviously, you're going to pay higher insurance on newer vehicles, but you're also going to have a much more reliable fleet. And the way Enterprise manages the system is they look at your buybacks. So after your 48-month lease, which these are on before full payment, they figure your mileage and they go through and they offer us basically a benefit that they provide what your buyback would be in the market. So we're having a company that essentially specializes in this to tell you when is the best time to then in turn sell these vehicles to get the biggest bang for your buck, as opposed to we're running them till the wheels fall off. I mean, you know, you got 200,000 miles on a police cruiser that you then turn around, and I mean, I've sold them on Gov Deals for $300. I mean, we got nothing out of that, and it stayed in the shop probably 6 months out of the year. You replace transmissions, you do any and everything. So this program allows us for a full kind of a management of our fleet, and offers us kind of the efficiency of we're not giving that capital outlay up front for the purchase of these 6 vehicles. We're spreading that out over 48 months. So it helps us keep our capital in-house, and then offers us a better opportunity to get money in the end of it, which can then in turn fund your program to continue. So it was more for clarification and just to explain how the program works fully. I'll be glad to take any questions.
It's a different management company this year?
No, sir, it is still Enterprise. It's just, it was more of a clarification that I wanted to explain after having been through the program for a year and seeing what advantages it provided us to be able to stand here and tell you how much easier it is and how much money it actually saves us on the front end. Because you got to think, if we order a vehicle, once we get it, we've then got to outfit it. So, you know, the time it takes me to get a vehicle, which is nowhere near this quick, we've then got to send it off and have it outfitted to where the day we get this, we're ready to roll.
We've ironed out the wrinkles in the program over the past year. I think everybody has a pretty good comfort level
Correct.
I also want to note the funding is from SPLOST, so this will not be coming from general fund dollars. And we had $95,000 allocated. We want to play it conservative and only spend this 67,711.
Anyone have any questions for any of these people? I think we need to have a motion to approve the lease agreement, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve that lease agreement.
okay. Have a second?
He seconded, Ross did.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's approved. It'll be on the consent agenda next week.
Thank you, sir.
That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Welcome, Walter. We look forward to meeting you right after the meeting, so don't go anywhere. Glad you're in Monroe and hope you love it as much as we do. Moving to Planning and Code, Ms. Malcolm.
I think I'll turn it over to Mr. Kelly. We have several things on the agenda.
Yes, we do have several things on the agenda, so I'll leave that to come back up as necessary. But going over the code department report for December, just a few things to point out. We had a couple of major projects that finally got off the ground. Silver Queen broke ground in December, and the Main Street Walton Mill Apartments project, or the quarry, as I like to call it for the time being, got off the ground. So hopefully they'll get that part done and start building some buildings soon. The city marshal, he removed 42 signs from the roadway, wrote 126 repair cleanup orders and re-inspected those. He investigated 6 tampering cases and wrote 8 citations in that month. Also represented the city in municipal court and completed 24 hours of post-certification training. The remainder of the report is pretty standard, so if you have any questions about any of it, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. I think that's all we have.
Quick and painless. Economic Development, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Closet. We've got a lot of great things going on right now.
You have the report in front of you. The Downtown Development Authority had their annual award celebration and recognized JEC Development with the Golden Hammer Award for their renovation of the Monroe Mercantile Building. Also honored Carol Queen as Volunteer of the Year and Made in Monroe as the Business of the Year. So wanted to make sure those of you knew that. And we also welcomed Young Game Changers to the community last week. You may have seen, you all got invitations. Thank you for those of you that were able to meet them and participate. It's a really impressive group of young professionals. And they were also impressed with this community. And many of them are excited about taking things here back to their homes, which is part of the goal. And I'm eager to see what they present for us and come up with. Also, you can see there our event card. We'll start sending these out in direct mail soon to get the word out for our annual events in 2019. We're right now underway raising the sponsorship for these events. And we're a good ways towards raising what we raise every year, so that's exciting. Last thing to mention is that the Chocolate Walk's this Thursday, car show's coming up in March. And also wanted to point out that we had 1,760 visitors to the Visitor Center last year. So that's 287 more than the year before, and that's exciting to see people continue to see our community and get information. And a lot of people come there for directions, which is great. So, yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have one about the Young Game Changers.
Yes.
I've had a lot of questions in town. So they'll be here for roughly the whole.
Their period of planning is an 8-month process, and so they had their first introduction. They'll be back in March. They'll probably be reaching out to many of you in this room for interviews and to ask questions. They'll be back in June, and then their final presentation to the community will be August 9th, and that'll be a ticketed dinner where hopefully we'll get a lot of participation from people in the community to hear their proposal, and our goal is to implement some of the ideas that they present.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Scarlett.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I do want to recognize James Draper. He's one half of the Golden Hammer Award winner for the downtown development. with JEC. So thank you and your dad and your brother. You can call him long distance. Moving to parks, Ms. Crawford, I think you might want to call Sadie up for some updates. This was not on the agenda, but it is something that will be from here on out, so.
Ms. Quadri.
I do have an update for the parks, even though, sorry, I don't have anything in front of you. The last part of the crowdfunding campaign for Places to Play was the equipment for Children's Park. And the slides have been put into the hillside. And that's really, people are already posting videos of using those. So that's exciting to have that piece done. City Crews had to help some, and there are more pieces to go with that. And hopefully they'll be installed before we have permanent pretty weather. And that's the first of our little local park development there.
Seen a lot of those videos. That's exciting.
Also want to add real quickly that I'll be getting with each of you, along with Daryl Stone, to start master planning each of our city parks going forward. The ones that are in your district, I think we can give you guys more of a take on initially, and then, of course, then that'll start flowing through the Parks Committee and then ultimately through the full city council. But we just need to go ahead and start getting these master plans in place, because then we can go ahead and start lining up grant funding and other opportunities like that.
Thank you, Mosh, for letting me put you on the spot. I won't do it again. Next up, items for discussion, rezone 1600 East Church Street. Mr. Stone.
Yes. Currently, Patrick has reached out to applicant and asked him if he was going to be able to distribute any kind of additional information and any kind of presentations or any type of data on a thumb drive that could be presented. As of today, we have not had any response back, so not saying that he didn't show tonight, not saying he won't show next week, but we've requested the additional information from him at this time. So right now, it's an unknown.
I'd like to make a point. I talked with Logan about this week. I think we as a council need to set a policy within your department that we will not accept any additional proposals after the first meeting, period, or prior to the first meeting of the month when we have a work session, because it is not fair to any of us, and especially to you all, to have that information come in at the 11th hour, and then you have to review it, and then, of course, send it out to us. And we have no time to absorb it and compare it and actually visit the site possibly if they're, if they're proposing any changes that might require visuals, or to even discuss with you, because your time is limited.
Thank you. We'll look at implementing those policies or procedures as best we can to allow for more review time, not only by staff, but you all as well.
Next, we'll move to appointments to the tree board. Mr. Probst.
We have a couple of replacements here, actually 3 reappointments to replace Jeremiah Steele, Brian Thompson, and Elaine Oakes. Elaine Oakes has put in again. The applicant is there. Brian Thompson has put in again. And we're asking Daryl Stone to put in place of Jeremiah Steele due to his background in landscape architecture. So 2 from the city here with strong roots in this.
Okay. We'll take action on that next week. Moving to the approval of the fireworks agreement, Mr. Probst.
All right, once again, we'd like to contract with East Coast Pyrotechnics for a phenomenal fireworks display on the 4th of July. This is $15,000 budgeted from the general fund, and we're not exactly sure of the event yet. Sadie and I have been talking about how we can put that event on, but nevertheless, we have to have fireworks that seemed to be a very strong demand from the community for the past couple of years. So wanted to go ahead and get this agreement in place because they book up quickly. And I know Bill likes working with these guys in the fire department, right?
And you need that tonight, or next week is soon enough?
Next week. I just wanted to get it on the February calendar here.
And I'm glad Shane kicked off the 200th in bringing our fireworks back, and would be interested to see what else we're going to add. So part of the planning, whether it's bands or food trucks or just fireworks. Moving to the second reading of the Historic Preservation Commission Membership Ordinance Amendment, Mr. Kelly.
I believe the second reading was going to be this evening. If that's not correct, let me know. Or it'll be next Tuesday.
No, it'll be next Tuesday.
If you have any questions
Any questions?
about the Historic Preservation Membership Ordinance Amendment, I'll be happy to answer them. We're just basically getting in line with the DNR requirements on that.
I have a question just on, how do we determine the boundaries of the historic district?
It's basically determined by nomination and election through the process as described in our code of ordinances. I couldn't exactly tell you the whole process right now, but it's basically, they get nominated for designation and then voted on. You can even actually, if you have a property that's not in, you can actually petition to get in. And you can also petition to be removed.
The current boundaries that we have within the city, are these, do we also apply for state designation for that, or is that only local?
The Historic Preservation Commission is just local, as a qualified local government for our HPC.
With the district?
The districts are recorded with the Department of Natural Resources as a natural resource of the city and the state.
There's a legislation coming up this year in the Georgia legislature that affects it, and that was the reason I asked the question of whether or not it was state certified, because that's apparently going to be an issue.
Right, that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get in line with the DNR's regulations.
Okay, regarding the performance and maintenance bonds ordinance amendment, we'll have the first reading next week. Are there any questions for Patrick in advance? See you next
Simply
week.
for clarification, simplification, and specification. But yeah, it's just trying to make it easier on the developer to enter into those agreements with us.
Great.
And staff to maintain these bonds as well.
They're in a standard form.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Next, approval of the next site contract funding renewal, Ms. Krosick.
Nextsite is the company that we entered into a 3-year agreement with last year for retail recruitment. They came and did a presentation in November. If you remember Andy Camp that came and kind of shared what work they've been doing and how they've been representing us at the International Shopping Centers conferences. And so each year, we only approve funding for 1 year. We have to approve the funding each year. So this is the second, asking for your approval for the second year funding of the 3-year contract.
You good with them?
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. Concert series, Sadie.
So you see the contracts, the summary of the contracts before you. It's actually 4 separate contracts for the 4 concerts. And be happy to answer any questions. 2 of the bands are new bands. Actually, 3 of the bands may be new bands this year. And you'll see a wide variety in the prices. And 2 of them our office pursued directly, and 2 were coordinated through a volunteer. And that is what accounts for the range in prices. And the one is solo. They're out of Athens. They're an 8-person band, and they were thrilled to be playing our series. So that's why they came in so low, which was great.
And we'll have our first concert at the Downtown Green on the 6th, right, September?
That's the hope. The target is to do the final concert of the series on the Downtown Green. That's going to involve some additional staging, obviously, and coordination to pull that off. But that's kind of the fingers crossed hope for that one.
We can get it all done, yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
It's a little pressure. Thank you. Moving to, I think we only have one item on the agenda tonight that requires any action. It's the resolution for the Electric Cities of Georgia Participant Contract Amendment Number 3. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended a pole attachment service meeting with ECG week before last, and there's a problem with the method of their billing. Most services done through ECG are evenly spread out across all the participants that participate in that service. And that's what's done here. Problem, though, what's happened is in cities where they have AT&T service, there's a different layer to their contract that creates an unfunded engineering cost. So what's happening is, what would happen if this hadn't been corrected or isn't corrected, is that cost would spread out over all the cities that are in the service instead of the city that incurred that cost. Because nothing is actually billed to AT&T because there's no work done on these individual poles, then that service would be, it would just spread out amongst all of us. Now, with us and Windstream, we put out all costs to Windstream if there is what's called a make-ready request from Windstream. Basically, Windstream requests that they want us to make changes to their poles, our pole space to allow them to attach. They get all incurred costs. But with AT&T, any pole they engineer but do not touch creates a charge that's spread out amongst the cities. So this change will fix that. It will fix that where the city that incurs the cost will pay the cost. Take any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr. Rosenthal?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution of the City of Monroe approving Amendment Number 3 to the intergovernmental participant contract among all participants respecting participation in the Electric Cities of Georgia, Inc. and for other purposes, whereas all 52 political subdivisions or other governmental bodies owning or operating electric distribution systems in the state of Georgia, including the City of Monroe, caused to be formed ECG as its successor to GMA's electric station back in 1992 in order to facilitate increased joint action among the participants, and whereas ECG is a Georgia nonprofit corporation under the Georgia Nonprofit Code and instrumentality of participants under Section 115 of the Internal Revenue Code and operates on a nonprofit basis on behalf of each of the participants, having no purpose other than to benefit the participants directly or through economies of scale, and all of its annual costs and benefits are shared and allocated among the participants. And whereas the 52 participants have entered into an intergovernmental participant contract dated as of February 1, 2013, setting forth the terms and certain services to be provided by ECG on each of their behalf. And whereas the participants desire that certain amendments to the contract be made pursuant to Section 403 thereof, which provides that the contract may be amended with written approval of 75% of participants that would be affected by such amendment using the weighted vote methodology set forth in such section. And whereas the affected participants of the pole attachment services desire to amend the exhibit to the contract related to the pole attachment service, Exhibit A12, to reflect that certain costs of the pole attachment services are to be allocated to the pole attachment services participants directly related to such costs. Now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the City of Monroe in this meeting duly assembled, and is hereby resolved by authority thereof as follows. Section 1, the participant hereby approves the amendment provided for by that certain draft amendment number 3 to the contract among the participants, and substantially the form is attached hereto as Exhibit A, and approves and authorizes the execution and delivery of the amendment. Such amendment will be executed by either the mayor or the city administrator, attested by the appropriate officer of the participant, and will have the participant's seal fixed thereto and be delivered to ECG on behalf of the other participants. Execution of the amendment as authorized herein will be conclusive evidence of the participants' approval thereof. Section 2, the participant body hereby authorizes the authorized official to take any further actions and execute and deliver any other documents necessary to carry out the purpose of this resolution. Section 3, all resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. So resolved this 5th day of February 2019. That is the resolution, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the resolution.
A motion by Mr. Littledoer, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We moved through pretty quickly tonight. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Malcolm and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good night, everybody.